No. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely fine too. But yeah, you got to think. I love focusing on one country and particularly Scandinavia is fantastic. I think Denmark, I would have said Denmark or Sweden, but you have a partner in Denmark. I think that makes absolute sense and maybe even better than Sweden for the diverse of the economy and everything else. And yeah, I mean, to think about, really targeting what the targeting of picking one of the types of places, installations, if you will, is
Mhm.
that really allows you to better verbalize your message. Otherwise, if it's for office or home, those are two very different stories, even though it's the same light. So, you can think about there's the office, there's the, office with office workers, there's the home, and then there's perhaps retail, as you mentioned, car dealerships, malls with, atriums and stuff. Those tend to be very long lead times, right?
Right.
And so while maybe a good long, I mean, listen, the thing is, long term, all three of these are fantastic markets, and all three of these you can make a very strong case for why they're a good investment and all of these things. But it's not, the focus is not to limit you. It's just to what kicks you off, what gets you off the ground. And then, I think your experience and your feelings, in this direction. And of course, lots to be said for the office. Not a lot of people focus on the office. That's another opportunity. I mean, there's plenty of people saying, how you can better design your home and, better design your malls and all of these things. But very few people talk about the improvements you can make to, especially as we want to lure workers back into the office from their home.
So you do believe in this hyper focus strategy. Of course, I mean, you teach this concept, and
Yes, of course.
it was also coming to us from this one statement that you said in our previous sessions, and you specifically said hyper focus, one country, one place, one segment, and that was, like I mentioned in the mail also, that was just coming back to us because
Mhm.
it was not practical and possible to reach at so many different places with so many different categories with so many different products,
Of
to start
course.
with. In fact, I mean, now the next question would be that how do you envision expansion for this? Let's say we have personally, I've written down some notes over there, you probably can't read it, but so we have made this plan for the next 3 years to be in Denmark, and specifically for the office spaces. And we have not had a very aggressive sales plan. It's all right, and we don't plan to do very aggressive. We understand that too much scale also kills. You've got to start slow and slowly expand on that. But what
But
do you
let me,
think an
well,
expansion
yeah,
is?
let me ask a question though first, because
Yeah.
getting something off the ground like this is, a new revolutionary. It's also, not cheap to install. The partner that you have, I mean, do they have connections? What's going to get this going is, we talked about, your connections in India. Like, we've got to make a personal connection, to a company that is going to be willing to, be the trial run, right? To get this off the ground, to propel this thing forward. So I think you're going to have to really work sort of the angles here on maybe what does the partner focus on? I mean, do they do a lot of business installations? Do they have connections that, someone that you could go in? And I think if you can, get some meetings, face to face with some of these people and, again, cut them a deal to get the first installations in as the pioneers of doing this, that will hopefully generate some PR, which I think absolutely the photos are fabulous. And that's really, the strategy for kicking this off. What is the situation with your partner? You said they do ceilings, but I mean, all types. Do they have any connections?
Right. I'll answer this question and also ask
Yeah,
one question before I answer it. You said something about PR that wasn't quite clear. Could you repeat that?
sure. Well, I think the idea of how do we generate word of mouth on this? I
Okay.
mean, you have something that is, terrific and new and has news value. particularly in the office space. I think within, trade publications and, even rolling up to more general interest publications of how this, simulated sun in the workspace is, changing workers' attitudes and productivity. And
Right.
I think the what's great about a business is, they're going to be willing to talk about it as well because it's good for them.
Right.
And more so than a private, a rich private citizen isn't always interested in showing off their house. Whereas a company is much more interested in, to doing on the PR side. And that's where, working together would help in this process.
All right. So answering your question, the
Yeah.
partner that we have does all kinds of ceilings. So
Mhm.
any kind of false ceiling that you see in any kind of space, and he's obviously in all segments. That could be police stations, commercial places, malls, airports, and so
Okay.
there's a cemented ceiling. There's then a lot of wiring and a lot of ducting done under it, and then there comes an artificial ceiling, which we call a false ceiling.
Right.
That's the kind of ceilings that he makes. Why he's also a very ideal partner for us is because our customer are architects. We've got to
Right.
deal directly to architects. We doubt that we'll get a lot of business dealing with office owners, because ultimately when an office is being constructed, it's the architect who's constructing that, right?
Yeah.
um,
The
of course.
designing it and, picking out all the
Correct.
finishes and all of
Correct.
the elements.
Exactly. And also, architect in a way is a golden goose for us. We form a relationship with him. He's going to keep coming back with a lot of orders for us because he's in that business, right? He's meeting new clients. He's doing new business of making houses and office probably every other week. So the target customer for this partner, which we have in Denmark, and us is exactly the same. He's dealing with architects only. His business is driven from architects, and so is
Mhm.
ours.
Of course.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is quite beneficial, and we're running along the same lines in context to who we want to serve to. Uh, yeah, that's that. I want to know more about expansion. Like I said before, do you think this strategy is just good to kick it off, or is it also good to then sustain in the future? What do you think we should expand in the future? Should we expand our product range? Should we expand our segment of workspaces to also residentials? Should we also expand from Denmark to Norway? That's what I'm a little unclear about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't make all the decisions now about what to do in the future because what's going to happen next is really going to greatly impact it. I mean, listen, it could be like no offices want this, right? I mean, who knows? You really you can't predict, and that at that point, you would have to pivot. My feeling is that this will be successful in offices. And so you got to leverage what that word of mouth is. The other thing is that if you can generate some buzz about this, partners may come to you interested in expanding into their markets. So, it really is about making those connections. Now, I wouldn't, go immediately to Australia or something, incredibly far away, but you can imagine if, this is great in Norway, Norway and Denmark, that there's you want to think about Europe as the next area, country by country. And you don't necessarily have to pick right now because I think, as you point out, this really has to be making connections with those architects, and that's something I believe that the right partners can help generate. As well as the strategy of the promotion side of this. Now, I gather that the architect, and I've dealt with other businesses that also have the similar issue of they're selling finishes that go into buildings, and it is the architect that makes the decision. But I mean, that end user is also important. And depending on the situation, you can, involve them. And this is a really big game changer that they might see and be interested in. Now, because they're not interested in every doorknob and, light switch that, maybe they have an architect pick out. But this is fundamental to the space that they're providing for their workers. So, I mean, I think it's a bit of a two-pronged approach in terms of, I do believe that the architects will be excited, but also remember, they're usually dealing with the confines of a budget, right? And
Right.
so that is probably predetermined, and putting this in maybe means, cutting back on something else, or it may be that they have to, get approval for an increase of budget. So, they're not going to be terribly easy, but again, to start off, if you can get some meetings with, some companies, some top architects to talk to them about it. Again, this is going to really give you the experience of, you've got to perfect the pitch, right? And I'm sure you're doing that all the time, but this is a new market that's never heard of you. And I do think I am glad that you're going outside of India. There's something about being an imported product that has some allure. For some reason, like inside your own country, they don't think as much of you as if you're, the imported. And listen, because I do believe, as we talked about, India is really seen as this, homeopathic, sunlight, energy, health. There's a lot of Ayurveda. There's so many practices that come out of India that I think, inherit as an Indian brand, that is really, a big plus for you. And so I think that, will be very helpful in going into these new markets that, wouldn't be as, it's like, being in the US, right? The same thing. We all think, the Britons are, that we love their accent. There's something about being foreign that has appeal, especially, again, there's a strong connection to what the category and what you're selling with your heritage, nationality, country perceptions, that they align very well. I mean, you wouldn't want to be selling, pasta from India. That wouldn't be, if you
Right.
want pasta, you want to be Italian, right?
That we've got to talk in more depth about this, because what we were thinking right now was completely on the opposite lines.
Okay.
We were doing this with the intention of establishing this as a Danish brand, and
Mhm.
because we were under the impression that this is the thing that would give us credibility. This is the thing which people would buy into, that we are a Danish brand, and naturally Danish brands, they have some sort of a reputation and some sort of a credibility which would be associated with our brand if we make it Danish. But you say that it is a natural human tendency to appreciate something which is imported, and I believe that that's why also, while we were thinking of doing this business in India, we would have never thought of establishing this company as an Indian company. We were, in fact, my father has also gone to Europe, to Italy, and established a company there so that we can call this an Italian company and do some part of the manufacturing over there, so that in India, people have more acceptance towards an Italian product. And so, with the same mindset, you say that this is also how the psychology of the Denmark people would work. They wouldn't appreciate something as being manufactured and made in their own country as they would for an imported product. I want to
Yeah,
know
no,
more about this.
yeah. No, I think you got to make a very clear distinction. There is something very different between where you manufacture it and what the origin of the brand is. And because they can be very different and have very different perceptions.
Let me add something before you say
Yeah.
this. It'll give you a better idea. We are manufacturing this entire product in China. And I was, in fact, in China for the whole of last month, and we have established a couple of different factories over there, and we
Yeah.
have outsourced the entire production, manufacturing, and also assembly in China. So
Mhm.
when we had finalized and made concrete decisions that we want to do this only in Denmark, our next instinct was that we shouldn't assemble this in China. Every part of manufacturing should not be done in China. We should do a part of it in Denmark and a part of it in China, so that it's not seen as a Chinese product. Yeah, now that you know the whole story, I want you to please continue what you were saying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, listen, everybody makes everything in China. There's obviously, financial reasons to do that. Is some advantage. I mean, yeah, listen, you're right. There's some advantage to having some assembly be done in, the local, usually the local country of origin is the best place to do the end assembly because you don't want to ship it. The Listen, Nike is an American brand. They're made in China, right? Most people, iPhone is one of the most successful American brands, yet, they're basically made in China. And they don't have a perception of being Chinese or imported or anything else because it is the brand. And not only that, more importantly, companies these days, it's the entrepreneur that is incredibly important. It's as much as it's Tesla, it's Elon Musk. As much as it's Apple, it was Steve Jobs. As much it was, Amazon, it was Jeff Bezos. That the entrepreneur behind it is incredibly important. And even you see we have American companies that many of which are run by Indian Americans, some of which have immigrated here not that long ago, and so you've got and of course, well, the the perception of, I mean, Indian entrepreneurs have a very good perception, right, of being very
Really?
high tech and smart. I
That's not
mean.
the impression that we have.
Well, I mean, not everyone. I mean, you've got like a couple billion people there. It's listen, India is the high tech, capital of the world in terms of, the IT infrastructure,
Correct.
and coding and everything else. And they're slowly building as well, companies around that. But for sure they're very highly, respected. And so you got that. Um, what you can't do is you can't fake it, right? I mean, you can't fake that you're a Danish, entrepreneur building a brand, in Denmark.
Not an
Um,
entrepreneur. We don't want to, yes, we do want to fake a part of
well,
it.
yeah, but let me finish first. Okay, every company needs an exciting entrepreneur like Elon Musk to be out there talking. You can't just have a company that has a website and no people. They want to know who had this weird idea and put this out there. Now, you can sell the rights to a Danish guy and he can, say that it was his idea and he built the factory and he did everything. And you guys, take the money and let him be famous. But somebody's got to be the famous spokesperson that said, this was my idea and I built it with my bootstraps. And this is, gonna be the story of the company. And so you can't just manufacture that. Now there's advantages and disadvantages, but the thing is like you have a reality that you're a young Indian entrepreneur, right? That has this idea and working with your father. It is a very interesting story that I don't see having, you're not a Russian oligarch that might have some issues selling this story. That might not be, you're not in the Chinese Communist Party, and there's very nice elements of the story. Now, I think you can do this as a, an Indian, moving to Denmark to start this up, this company, and be the combination of, starting it in a place that you felt was the best opportunity. But you can't hide who you are. You're not Danish. And you're the best part of the story. I mean, there are very few very, young entrepreneurs that have, truly very, different ideas out there. And so, faking it is going to be much harder than just going with the real thing. Now,
Hmm.
what in terms of manufacturing, again, it's where the brand is from. And I think that, yeah, you're right. Because you're going to be starting this in Denmark, I would assume you might be living there for a significant part of the time to launch this. I
Right.
mean, that makes perfect sense. But you certainly wouldn't want to hide the fact that you're an Indian, and seeing this as
Absolutely
a,
not.
a big opportunity to bring sun. I mean, this is the headline. You're bringing sunlight to the
Right.
northern Europe. I mean,
And
India is no. I mean, I think it's an incredibly important part of the story, that you can, weave in, and you've talked about, the health, drive that you and your father have, and learning about this. So, you don't want to give up on that.
I'm glad you brought this up, Laura. And for this reason, I quickly want to show you the new website, and the new website that we have, and the first page of that website, which is
Yeah, there
talking
you are.
about the product. Light is one of the most fundamental creations of the world, and it influences our thoughts, focus, and mood more than we can imagine. So
Yeah, love it.
that's exactly the idea. There's two aspects to this, right? I'm glad that we're talking about this topic because we need some clarity here. There's two very distinct categories here, which is where is the brand from and who is the founder of this business, right?
Hmm.
I in no way want to hide and want to fake my personality as an Indian entrepreneur, right? In fact, this would bring a lot of credibility, like you said, because India is known for its deep ancient roots of Ayurveda and science, and also now in the new age for new age high tech entrepreneurs. So that could, if anything, just add a lot of credibility to the brand. But what I want to know from you is, do you think we should do the same for where is the brand from? Do you think we should give it an Indian origin, or do you think we should give it a Chinese origin? From what I have understood from you, I think that what you mean to say is that holds less significance when the brand has a face. Is that right? By the example of Nike and Apple that you gave me, they, although
Hmm.
they manufacture in China, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that they're perceived as a Chinese brand. So do you
No,
think
no.
the face has a higher value than where the brand is from?
Where you manufacture something really has little significance in anything these days. There's certain times where, a food, or, things that, people have concerns about. But certainly, buying lighting, or most things, you look closely, they are made in China. What they feel is, it's the brand that is important. I think certainly the name of the brand. Here you have a situation, and in most cases, the brand has already been started in that country of origin, right? So, if had you been in business in India for 10 years, this would be you can't just go to Denmark and pretend like, it's a Danish company, right? That would be very
Correct.
inconsistent. Here,
Correct.
here you have a situation where this company really hasn't, been launched yet.
Correct. We can
So
decide.
if as an Indian entrepreneur, you decide to establish it in Dana in Denmark, as a, really, it's a combination of, Indian, Danish, heritage, which would be a very interesting story because of obviously you've got the your connection to your partner. You'll be launching this as the place of opportunity for this brand. India has enough sunlight, right? You're bringing light to the world. I think they're listen, it's the same way many entrepreneurs, we have many immigrant entrepreneurs that come to America, right? It's the American dream. They take their idea. Chobani was done by a Turkish immigrant, but Chobani is an American brand. But also, his Turkish history is not hidden. It's a very interesting part of the story, as a matter of fact, especially because he's known for Greek yogurt, right? And so, I think you want to think about, the truth is usually way more interesting than, if you could, make something up. And so here, I think, your story itself, and so it's not an Indian, and also, I mean, you have to think about how you're going to set this up. I mean, if you have a partner there, there's also, in many companies, if you read our book, The War in the Boardroom, many
Which
good
one?
a war in the boardroom. So
Okay.
it's about left and right brain thinking within companies. And so many times you have a right, the creative right brainer and the left management type as partnerships in a country, in a company. You got Dolce and Gabbana, right? One is the designer, the other guy's the business guy, right? And that often makes, as well as a very good story. I mean, even, it was Tim Cook and Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
He was, the theoretic, the numbers guy. And so, that might be, I mean, if you set it up, that you could have, a Danish partner, if you will, to make it, an interesting combination, or not. I mean, it's just an idea of the company story, is an important, a new company like this is an incredibly important part of the pitch. Why, they want to know why you're doing this, how you got into it. And I think you have the, selling of the light message, very, very good. But now we have to think of, the business side of it. The one thing that I will say is, a road bump, if you're very young, right? Which is a good and a bad thing. And the best things are have that bit of controversy about it. But you need somewhat of a counterbalance to, your youth and your creativity that grounds the company. Now we've talked, I mean, it could be your father in that situation as a nice, or it could be a Danish partner, business partner that, believes in you and says, backs up basically all that you have done. And so I think that will be a very stabilizing force. So it's not you alone, although, you are a fantastic, lead spokesperson. But again, this is, such a new, company and category. You've got to really build out the whole brand story.
This is really helpful and interesting. This is a
Yeah.
very new perspective, actually. They've not given enough value to uh, the story part of it, of why people would care to know why we exist, or why we want to enter the Danish market. Of course, we've thought about this from the perspective of marketing, but
Hmm.
never really from the perspective of the the Deans, the Denmark population, and what
Hmm.
they want to hear. I think what they would want to hear is, like you said, the origin of Indian roots, of a young entrepreneur mixed with a deeply rooted and a grounded person who is mature enough to handle the business part of it. At least that's the kind of perception that we want to give away to the people,
Of
if
course.
not said directly. This is I'm writing this down as you speak. This is
Yeah,
quite
and
a
I do think that the Danish partner will be, of a very good value here to provide their input on this. And of course, the best thing is going to be once you have the experience of having them actually install one of these, because
Yeah.
seeing is believing, right? As much as you can make it look lovely on a video, there's no doubt, if once you have this in a interior room that had no light and suddenly has sunlight, the turning of the lights on, I think is, will be a wonderful kind of surprise for everybody. And that too, I mean, I think, will be from the story part of, the Danish person, this is idea has come to them. They got excited about it, but then, as they get more involved in it, will be very good to give, a bit of their stamp of approval, but also in terms of their impact, in believing in this idea. That validation of being, really sealing experts, right? They do this all the time, and being able to really notice, my goodness, if when we put one of these in, it is, truly transformational. I also think, to listen to their input, and I'm sure they will say this, but the transformation in a dreary office type of situation is, in one of the best first applications of this.
Mm.
Again, it's one of these things that, you can't go wrong in installing it. But it has more impact, in some places than others, particularly, the numbers are clear in terms of, the number of hours you may spend in an office versus, I mean, you're at home, but you're usually sleeping with the lights out. So the numbers aren't quite the same.
Right, right. This is quite clear, and I will need some time to contemplate and discuss this with the team and my father. What I want to discuss with you now is what we had started our conversation with was that the hyper focus, right? I'm just afraid of being restricted. When you hyper focus to a country and a segment and even to the audience, at what point would you feel that, okay, this is the limit and this is the point that I'm restricting myself and hampering my growth? Do you think it would be of equal potency if we don't do this only for the office spaces and introduced a couple of different segments? Or do you think it's important to enter in just with one category? Although we have had couple of discussions about it in the past few weeks, but I still want reassurance that this is the right path, because all our assets, all our communication, all our digital media will be designed around this. If it's office spaces, it'll all be now changed to just offices, the renders, the animations, everything. So I want to be sure that we're going on the right path.
Well, I do believe to get something off the ground, and like you say, you also have limited resources. So if you're going after different things, that means spreading all of your resources, because the messages are quite different between a home installation and office installation versus, a car dealership. While the same product, it's a
Right.
very different, feel and message and everything else. So you've got to make, as targeted a strike. It's like military warfare. You don't want to just scatter shot hoping something hits. You want to make it as strong and powerful at the start. It doesn't mean limiting you in the long term. I would urge you though to talk to the local partner, as to gathering their input. Again, you got to have a little bit of luck with some of these things, in terms of if
Oh,
they have certain, connections with certain architects, and having those discussions before you make the, final decision of what the best, you want to you want to hit with the easiest target, right? You don't want to hit the hardest thing that is going to be most challenging, even though it might be the end goal. What is the softest target that we can get, a big bang, a big statement, and you've got to analyze that, much the way the military analyzes, who we're going to strike. And so, I don't know enough about the situation to give you, 100% that it's office or home. But it's got to be one of them. Or,
Yeah, exactly. My
yeah.
question is not that should it be office or homes. My question is that it has to be one. Like,
Yes, of course. Yeah, it has to be one. I mean,
I'm
to
happy.
me, the challenge is picking one. But I know I've got to pick one. And
That's a
that's where I
trial and
think,
error. We'll figure it out with time. Like you said, that's also a
yeah,
matter.
well, you've got to. I think sometimes as people get, they make a plan, right? They make a 5-year plan. Well, you might make it, but you have to be ready to adjust. You have to be ready for some sort of big opportunity, and that's why you don't want to, launch with a big bang approach. You've got to be ready. The advantage in some ways that an entrepreneur has is to be able to pivot to something, that is truly, important and revolutionary. And a little, and that's why the big ideas generally come from entrepreneurs. I mean, even if you look at the, AI, Google was too big to launch, an AI chatbot like that. It was, it was too significant where, ChatGPT as a small entrepreneur, was able to do things and almost get away with things,
Yeah.
that a big company can't.
Yeah.
And so there's great advantage in that. And so I think, but absolutely, I mean, to start with this, you want to pick that target and line it up. Now, it's not forever, but you got to get this thing going. I mean, once it's going, I mean, there's not a specific number on it. I mean, I think once you have, the resources, the sales come in, naturally, a success will bring in, interested people, to look at it in other markets. I think you'd want to, then look at the expansion. Of course, you think about, growth patterns. There's 2 ways to grow. Do you expand into every type of lighting market in Denmark, or do you take that, focus of an industry and go to other countries? My gut says is that you first you want to really dominate one, the office, if it is office space, to take that and to go to different countries, focused on office space and bringing the light, if you will, to those. But it's gonna depend on your success in office space.
Right.
You could say that, maybe the lead times are bad. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe.
It's experimental.
Yes, you've got, and I mean, maybe that experience will, the homeowner thing, takes off. You want to fan the flames of the fire. I mean, what we're trying to do is get the fire started here. You got to have an idea of, we think this is the spot. We're going to do everything we can. Hopefully it takes off. We fan the flames there,
Right.
but maybe a spark flies over here and,
Sure.
and becomes a big deal. At that point, you'd want to pivot your resources and, make a change. I mean, the thing with many companies is that, they spend way too much time propping up the losers instead of reinforcing the winners. That they beat their head against the wall of why isn't it? It should work. It should work in theory. Well, reality is not, always it throws you for a curveball. So you have to be able to sort of let go of some of those things that, even you should have worked, but didn't. And then sometimes things, take off, in another direction.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about what you said about everybody wanting to hear a story, right? Do you
Mhm.
uh, examples of Elon Musk and Tesla or Jeff Bezos and Amazon and Steve Jobs and Apple are relevant to today's age when there's almost 15,000 brands being introduced every single day? Do you think in this extremely very cluttered market of now just branding and marketing, does this hold any significance now?
Of course. I mean, listen, the thing is that every consumer is not evaluating the company's story and history for every product they buy. You buy pens, you buy this, but whatever company is in a business, has to have a story when they're doing the relationships, and this is for one, this is a big purchase. A 25-cent pen, people might not think about very much, but an expensive new type of lighting installation is something they absolutely are going to be thinking about, want to know more about. And even, really, if you think about it, the B2B type of selling, the story, the relationship is incredibly important, because, people are making these decisions and they feel a lot of pressure to
Mm,
back up their decision. Why did you
right.
buy from this weird thing, right? I mean,
Mm,
they have to be able to sell to their
mm,
superiors the rationale for buying and investing in this product. So it's incredibly important. I mean, I do think every company, at every level should have a story, but it's not that every person in the world is thinking about it. But there are key people,
good.
and yours is an absolute situation. Again, you're trying to create a brand. That's when the story is important. Long term, people are buying, this or that, that it becomes in some ways less relevant, but to kick it off, it's very difficult without a true and genuine, authentic type of story is much more appropriate. And here, absolutely, in terms of explaining it to your partners, your distribution, your architects. I mean, I think architects will be incredibly, interested in this, because they've got to sell it to their client. This is, there's multi layers, and the more layers and the more time and the more money, then the more important that story becomes.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's always that while you were explaining this to me, I thought about how we're also very targeted towards just architects, right? We don't have a customer base of, we don't have a B2C product where we're catering and addressing the entire world. So then marketing and communication and storytelling becomes a lot more effective when you're just telling it to a specific group of people. Sure. The last thing I want to talk to you about, since the clock is now ticking, is about the vision for this. And as an entrepreneur, you've got to think 5 years, 10 years down the line, right?
Mhm.
And let me start by sharing with you that we don't want this to be just a lighting product. We don't envision it that way 5 years from now. Though I want to know this specifically from you, because you may have some contradicting thoughts which could really be valuable. We are looking at this as one of the products in a very big concept and a bubble and an umbrella of wellness workspaces. This is something that we've been envisioning for a long time. A wellness
Mhm.
workspace is basically a place where the employees, the team, they spend their almost 10 to 12 hours of their day, right? And every single element of that workspace should contribute to their health. Let me break this down for you. One is, of course, the lighting, which is the
Mhm.
sunroof. The second aspect of this is air, very purified herbal air. The third aspect of this is water, the water that we drink, the water that we wash our hands with. Everything, every contact with any contact with water should be a purified state of water. Then there is sound. Now, sound is, of course, the kinds of sound vibrations going on in the workspace that makes you more focused. That's one aspect. And the other aspect of sound is also to make special sound boxes where you can have an absolutely distraction-free discussions or meetings. That sound, and like this, we've got about 7 or 8 more different category of products which all together come in and make the concept of wellness workspaces. That's the vision. The vision is not to simply sell ceilings, it's to give a holistic solution of well-being inside workspaces. I want to know your feedback and your suggestions and your thoughts on this.
I think it's great to have a big vision like that. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Fantastic. But we got to start with electric cars. Right? I mean, I think for you, there are companies that talk about air quality, water quality. There's been some, sound type of things. I think your big opportunity is in lighting. And as much as you can become, dominant lighting, it will allow you to do the other things, and maybe you develop them the south, maybe you bring in partners, maybe I think it has to come from one central nuclei or focus. And I think you want to hesitate from trying to make the umbrella too soon. In terms of had Google changed their name to Alphabet in the first year, I think it would have been a disaster. I still don't even think they should have changed their name and Facebook to Meta. I mean, come on. Now, if you have a vision, that's fine. But let's focus on today, and become as powerful and well known for revolutionizing the lighting experience. I think for one, you can see the light, which is nice. I think the air you can't, right?
Right, right.
The water, maybe you taste, maybe you don't. Certainly, the sound can be heard, but I think what hasn't gotten the attention, and the big opportunity is in light. But yes, I mean, listen, it is I think what's the danger is confusing that vision with what your focus is. And you can have a focus and a vision. I think you can talk about this, but let's not forget that what the focus of this company is on today. What we're wanting to do today is to dominate lighting, the simulated sun type of lighting, and have this be our flag. That may allow us to realize this grand vision, of incorporating, to starting with lighting and then bringing in these other elements. But that's listen, the online shoe company Zappos, right? Fabulous, early success story of online retail selling, focused on shoes. But the guy, he thought he was selling happiness. You're selling shoes. Now, if you want to, the vision and the company, but it was shoes, and what made them different was the free shipping both ways. Now, did that lead to happiness because you weren't stressed that if the shoe didn't fit, you couldn't return it? Yes. But the happiness came from something very specific. And so sometimes entrepreneurs can get sidetracked by thinking they're in the happiness business. No, they're in the shoes, free shipping both ways business, which is a fabulous business to be in. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having the lighting, the simulated sun lighting skylights be your business. And then a long-term vision of not stopping there, right? I think that's the story there, that once you've improved all the lighting, you've got to think of the entirety. I mean, that's where I think that the Indian philosophy of holistic and homeopath, I mean, you can think of it is everything, of course. And that will come, and maybe you even it doesn't mean you have to sell everything, but I mean, you might pick the next, what you don't want to do is everything all at once. Right?
Right.
If you thought about it, the next, once you dominate lighting, I mean, you might think of what's the next thing to pick off. And who knows? I mean, I don't know if it's air, water, sound, whatever it might be. You'd want to do one at a time. And instead of, the other thing is, the BlackBerry device. I mean, they thought they were, into all sorts of electronics, and they were research in motion. Well, they were BlackBerry, and unless the BlackBerry has a future, research in motion had no future. And that's here. I mean, your future is connected to, the sunlight panels being a big success. And once that is, absolutely, you can, like Google has expanded into YouTube and other things, and Coca-Cola is the Coca-Cola company, yet they have lots and lots of different kinds of beverages and waters and all sorts of things that they have expanded into. But they all started with that one, core
Apple is a
strong
great example
focus.
of that. So there's so many Apple devices.
Yeah.
Apple didn't launch 11 devices on the first day of their arrival, right? It took them 20 years to.
That is a very good example. And most companies make the mistake of launching too many things all at once. And there is the patience, but here I think, again, you can keep that vision. That's an incredibly interesting part of the story, but just focus on the strategy here of making the lighting panels the biggest success possible, and in the office space, but be flexible to think about other opportunities if they come in front of you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. If please stay in touch, and I
No
look
doubt.
forward, hearing the updates. Please say hello to your dad.
For sure.
Yeah, it's been, very, very interesting, and I've enjoyed talking to you and giving you the insights. I think no, it'd be very exciting. I
Likewise,
love the
we all need
Danish.
mentors, and so this is the journey that I started with you, not just through our sessions, but almost 4 years ago through your wonderful books. And so
Yes.
I feel that since now we're starting to roll this business in the real world, and we are now entering into the new markets, into the new segments, we're going to need constant mentorship and guidance. And it's always good coming back to your mentors who guided you in the very beginning. And so
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no,
we've always
yeah.
connected very firmly to the learnings and teachings, of course through these live sessions, but also through the books. And so we're always very, very happy to discuss this with you and take guidance and take mentorship from you. We feel fortunate to have such a relationship with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really, I appreciate that. And I do love what I do. And, actually from this experience, I think, the opportunity for me to be a mentor to more entrepreneurs, is a category that I'm actually expanding into, because I think there's a lot of value, and as well, it's interesting, and I think can be very helpful. All right. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
like
you
I
so much,
said,
Mara.
yeah, I hope we can do this again. All right.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.